All right, what's up, guys? This is Brian and Joe from Midwest Gaming here with Frazier Smith, who within the last year or so has started a new I Am Nerd podcast.
Yep.
So we figured we'd get him on our own new podcast, kind of chat a little bit, talk about his Yu-Gi-Oh career accomplishments, stuff he likes to do outside of Yu-Gi-Oh, because the podcast that he's done, and we'll post a link in the description to his podcast.
Yeah, it's on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google.
All right.
It's on literally every platform. So
All right, we'll post a couple links in the description of that. But yeah, there's a wide variety of topics on the podcast from uh, Marvel movies to Kanye West. Got some Yu-Gi-Oh
yes,
player interviews too, so it's a lot of interesting content. And then we're gonna talk about Edison Format.
my
So
favorite.
yeah, so Minnesota has been doing some Time Wizard tournaments recently. They alternate every other week between
Yeah.
GOAT and a different format, and coming up is Edison. So it'll be interesting to see like an actual Edison tournament in person, kind of see what decks are coming out, how similar it is to the old Shonen Jump meta, or if it's geared more towards what has been more solved in the current Edison format. But yeah, should be good. Let's start with the Yu-Gi-Oh accomplishments, because that's always interesting to hear. I counted at least 10 when I put in your name in YouTube and I went through your tops, and there's at least 10
Yeah.
of them. Do you know the
Yeah.
exact number?
I think it's 22.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's 22. Because I remember. Okay, so I do know at the least it's 22 because there was a status I wrote like years and years ago when I topped my 22nd event. I wrote a status on Facebook. It was like pretty cringe now when I think about it, but it's I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22.
Oh, I love that.
Like it's
Oh,
like the Taylor Swift song. So
yeah. So,
I remember that day. So that yeah, I at least have 22. I'm not sure after that because I kind of just after a while you just kind of what it just becomes whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
but yeah, the weird thing is, or I guess not the weird thing, but the interesting thing is that I'm one of the people who won their first ever top. So like I topped my first show or YCS in 2010, which was Atlanta, and I won that event. And before that, like I was only known locally, so people in my area, like in the Philadelphia, I'm from Philadelphia,
mm,
and people from the Philadelphia area, like Philly, New York, Delaware, Jersey, that whole area, like Maryland, they knew who I was because I used to top a ton of regionals, and so I would go undefeated a lot of the time at regionals, like literally 10-0. In fact, it's so funny. I was trying to find my old deck list for Edison format. I played a Gladbees deck with Respite,
mhm.
and I was using 3 copies of that back in Edison format. And I typed in Frazier Smith Yu-Gi-Oh Glad Beast like 10-0, and it came up with a Pojo or Duelist Grounds thing where like my deck list and everything. So I was able to find it that way. It was so weird, but that stuff is still around. I used to be big on like Duelist Grounds, not big as in like a person, but just I used to lurk a lot. That used to be my thing. But yeah, back to the point. I won on my first top, and then I was offered a sponsorship by ARG. So the owner of that is Jim McMahon. And I actually turned it down because to me, I had like a chip on my shoulder. I was like, I don't want to be one of those people who the only thing they ever done is like they won, and then you never hear from them again. Because especially back then, there was a lot of like, not a lot, but there were people who would like win an event and then they'd never be successful ever again. Like they just kind of fall from grace, and you're like, all right, that guy most likely just got really lucky. That maybe it was just his day.
Mhm.
Maybe he had a good medical or something like that. But then you never see him again, never hear from him again, you never top anything else again. I didn't want to be that guy, so I declined the sponsorship because I wanted to prove myself first. So I told Jim, like, I don't feel comfortable taking a sponsorship and being paid with the expectation that I'm going to perform well consistently because up until this point, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I had not performed on the level of like a YCS champion. So I had like my own, I guess, like imposter syndrome, right? Like I was kind of rejecting that I am even good at the game and that I deserve to be considered like one of the people who had won an actual YCS. And that's something I struggled with a lot back then. But as the story ends up happening, I went on a tear and like the next like so right after I won, that was the last YCS of the year. And
Mhm.
then the next year I topped like 5 or 6 events. And that's when I was like, oh shit, like I'm actually pretty good now. Like I must know like something must be going. Like I topped my first nationals,
Yeah.
I topped a bunch of YCSs. And at that time, YCSs were I think they were like once a month, if that. They were
Yeah.
not they didn't it was before when they ramped them up and they started doing them like every 2 weeks. They were like once a month.
Mhm.
So to top like 6 of them in a year was a big deal. Like that was like insane. And so I felt really accomplished. So then Jim and I saw each other again at YCS Columbus at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. I think it was like October 2011.
Yeah, I think.
And because I know, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Columbus was October because it was
Yep,
Columbus and um, another one that was in November.
Kansas City. I topped that one as
Yeah.
well.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So I remember this because so much happened in 2011 for me. So I went to YCS at the end of 2010, last YCS of the year, and interestingly enough, that year, the first Shonen Jump Championship of the year was Edison, and I had gotten 34th. And that felt really shitty because that would have been my first top, right? And I
Mhm.
don't think I would have won the event if I'm being honest, because I was playing Machina Gadget. But
Okay.
I did go X and two and the biggest tournament of all time at that time. Like that was the biggest tournament before Long Beach,
Mhm.
Edison, the 75th. So that shit was like 2,000 people. And Yu-Gi-Oh had never seen anything like that at the time.
Mhm.
And I feel like it was 12 rounds. It might have been 11, but I feel like it was 12 rounds. But I just know I went X and two. I got 34th or 35th. And then the very next event after the Edison Shonen Jump Championship was the first ever YCS that Peter Chang won, Virginia. And I got 35th at that one.
Oh no.
So back to back tournaments, I go X and two and I get 34th, 35th. And so I'm shattered. Like at this point, I'm still like theoretically, I don't have any credentials outside of regionals. And I just feel really shitty because I really, really wanted to like prove myself. I mean, you know how it is when you're a Yu-Gi-Oh
Yeah.
player. Like I'm a really competitive person. So for me, I always wanted to be known as like, a good player. Like I just wanted to be known. I wanted everyone to like know me as a household name. And it just wasn't happening. And that shit was so frustrating. And then I think at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, my friend Steve Silverman had won his first event in 2010. So he won, I think it was Pasadena actually. He won like Pasadena. I mean, I know it was a Cali
Mhm.
Shonen Jump Championship, but he won with Lightsworn. So he's a Philly player. He was the first Philly player to ever win a Shonen Jump Championship. And I wanted to be the first. So there was like a lot of jealousy with that. Like like me and him at the time, we both had like done well in the area. I think he had topped maybe 2 Shonen Jumps before that, but obviously hadn't won. And then he went and won one. I was like, holy shit! Like this guy is completely just established himself as like the best player in Philly.
Mhm.
And I was like, for a while, I was kind of known as like the best player in Philly. But then it was like no longer a competition. It's like, well, you have to fucking win. And then 2010, I ended up winning as well. And so that was really cool. And then I start topping everything. And then next thing you know, like I have the best credentials in the entire Philadelphia. So I'm like the king of Philly for the next couple of years. It just felt so good because like I have a win, I have a bunch of tops, I'm a sponsor, I'm on like the best team with like Jeff Jones, Billy Brake, Ryan Spicer. I think Jarrell was on at the time, Alistair Albans. Um, what's the other guy? Alex Van Sant. There's like a bunch of people in that team. The first like ARG or one of the first ARG teams,
Mhm.
and then we ended up like Georgia Orlando came on, and yeah. So I told Jim at Columbus, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for that sponsorship now because this is like my fifth or sixth top. Like I just topped Toronto, which Billy had won, and then he ended up winning Columbus too,
Yep.
and then I topped Kansas City right after. And I had also done this other thing because I'm so like again, I have these personal goals, especially back then. And one of the goals was I didn't want to be known as I'm only good with gravekeepers, right? I didn't want to like I win with gravekeepers, and everyone just thinks that that's the only deck that I'll have success with, or that's the only like thing that I'll ever do. So I immediately after winning decided that I was not going to play gravekeepers ever again, and that if I was to top an event, it needed to be with a different deck. And I also went even more extreme. And I mean, I wanted it to be a different deck every time.
Mhm.
So right after that, I ended up topping Charlotte in 2011 with Dragoonity, and that was wild because Dragoonity like technically loses the Gravekeeper just because Necro Valley shuts the deck down. But then at the
Yep.
same time, because Dragoonity happens to be playing a field spell, there was a rule back then where there couldn't be two field spells on the field at the same time. So like you play Dragon's Ravine and it would kill Necro Valley. And I knew from being like the Gravekeeper expert that that kills Gravekeepers, like that just fucking shuts that deck down so bad. Like if you play a field spell, because it not only is it a +1 to just like kill Necro Valley by just playing your card, but it also is your engine for your own deck. So you make them commit to Necro Valley first, and then you play Dragon's Ravine over it. I know a lot of people will still be playing Gravekeepers and stuff like that. So that matchup was kind of free. Six Sams, I'm pretty sure, had gotten neutered by this time, because I know in February they had the YCS Dallas where the deck just was insane. It had like 3 Gateway, 3 Six Samurai United. Sheehan just came out, and it was the best deck by far.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Nazar won that event. And then right after that was the Charlotte event. And I topped with Dragoonity. And I believe I got to top 16, I want to say. And I lost to Fish FTK because he drew MST and Dust Tornado, I believe. And I had like 2 Ravines in my hand. He just like popped on me. I was like, oh, that's like the best case scenario for you. And then he like OTK'd me. And then after that, I switched to, I think it was X-Sabers, YCS Providence, which Tyree Tinsley wins. That's his first event. His first top, and he won. And he's playing Plants. I was playing X-Sabers. I had never played X-Sabers before then. McCabe had always been the X-Saber player, and he used to top all the time with that deck. I think he got like a couple prize cards off of X-Sabers, actually. And I top with X-Sabers, so now I have like Gravekeepers, Dragoonity, X-Saber, and then I switched to Agents for Nationals, and then I topped Nationals with Agents before Gachi came out, so it's just like, I don't even know what the point of that deck was. I don't even know why I played it. I just kind of liked Christia, and it was something different. Hyperion, I think, had just came out pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I just want to play this because it's new. I want to top with something else just to further prove that like I'm not a one-hit wonder. I'm not somebody who only is going to have success with one deck. I top with that, and then now we get to Plant format. I top with Plants, obviously, and then I top with like, or not top, but I ended up winning. So at Kansas City, there was a Friday tournament for like an Xbox, and I played Karakuri. And it was a big tournament because everyone who was playing in YCS pretty much played in that too. And I'm winning the whole thing with Karakuri. And people were like, oh my God, Frazier's Karakuri deck is so crazy. Like, there was all these rumors going around. And I ended up switching my deck for the actual YCS to like Plants, I think. And then I ended up topping Kansas City. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I did top. I topped with Plants. So that was the only time that I ever used the same deck twice because I truly felt that it was the best deck. And so I finally broken my little rule about like not topping with the same deck or playing the same deck over and over again. And I was like, I feel like at this point, like I've shown that I can do it, with anything.
Yeah.
So that was like the beginning of my career. This is like year 1, right? Like this is year 1 of me becoming super competitive. Because another thing is that before YCS Atlanta 2010, I had never flown anywhere ever. So if I could not get to it by car, then I just didn't go to the event. So anything on the West Coast was completely off limits for me. And for Atlanta, McCabe, one of my best friends, Sean McCabe was like, let's fly to Atlanta. Like, I think that the Gravekeeper deck is like really good. Like, let's actually take a chance. I had never flown before, so really scary for me at the time, but now it's like super normal. And that just kind of opened the door to the real competitive. Like when you're really competitive, you're booking flights, you're booking hotels, you're going from city to city every month. And that was my life. Like I was in college at the same time, but I was also like a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and I was like buying it, to keep myself. I didn't have a job. So I did what pretty much every Yu-Gi-Oh player does, is like buy and sell cards. That was like the thing I did in the area. And that's how I supported myself. And then I was in school anyway, so like I didn't really need much money for anything because like I have a dorm, I have my classes to go to during the week. Then I go to locals after my classes, and then yeah. And so yeah, I get sponsored by ARG. I start writing articles. People really like the articles. People like the series I did, like Origins, which just talks about when I very first started playing Yu-Gi-Oh, like 05-ish, around that time. And just like how I met Sean McCabe, how I met Steve Silverman, how I met like some of my other people at my locals who really like Tom Mack he's another YCS champion. And we have a lot now. Like Philly is just kind of crazy with the number of people at our local that has won big. But I used to do that series. I used to do articles just kind of help people out, like meta analysis, market stuff like Fiendish Chain when it first became popular and how it shot up to like $40. Talking about, how to side deck properly, how to knowing when to scoop for the sake of not only time, but just like for me, like I know sometimes people like they just won't scoop. They're like, no matter what, if I pay for this event, I flew here, I took a hotel here, like I'm not giving up. There's a chance I can win. But I think it's important that you know when you can no longer win, and just kind of like go to the next game. So if you have any outs, and like you should be good enough to know what your outs are, like even if it's just one card in your deck that can like actually like get you out of it. I won't scoop in that case, but I do think it's important to know that if your opponent just has like the stone cold nuts, like the board is just crazy, they have everything, and like there's no one card that you can draw that'll get you out of it. I just end the game. But a lot of people don't do that. Then they end up going into time, and then they losing time to get frustrated. And I'm like, well, you could have prevented this.
Hmm.
So I think this, and I'm only saying this right now because I think this is still applicable. I watch a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
games of current Yu-Gi-Oh, and sorry, somebody's beeping, but
It's all
I
good.
watch a lot of games of current Yu-Gi-Oh, and I see people lose in time, and it's because they'll like watch their opponent do full combo, and they don't have a way to play through it or anything. Like their hands kind of like meh, and they'll draw and like they'll play out their turn, they'll get completely shut down, and they won't like scoop, but they're not dead yet, but they like won't scoop. And it's just to me, it's like that's just pointless. Also, I feel like if your hand is just bad and you like there's no one card that'll draw you out of it. If my opponent gets full combo off and they're just like doing their 10-minute turn, I'm just like, I'd rather just go to the next game and not have the risk of losing the time. Because losing the time right now is really like the worst. I
Yeah.
just feel like it's so bad.
Yeah.
The way the rule is set up where you just instantly lose. I don't like it. But
Yeah, it's not great.
yeah, it's not. Yeah, like I actually said that if I played Yu-Gi-Oh right now, if I try to come back to current, because I haven't played since that rule has been a thing, and these rules have been a thing for years now. So I've
Yeah.
not played any Yu-Gi-Oh in the format that has that new time rule, but I am not the fastest player, and that scares me.
Mm.
Like that literally scares me. The idea of just like, oh, this phase is it, and that's it's done. And also in 2018, I was observing a lot of. I still went to like I would travel to events if they were close by. I wouldn't like fly to like Cali to go to an event
Mm.
when I wasn't playing, but I was still like go to things like Pittsburgh Nationals because I'm in PA, so it's like a 4 or 5 hour drive. So I'll go to nationals and stuff like that, and I will watch people play Sky Striker, and the Kalina thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you just gain life and time, and I was like, this is so bullshit. Like this is just you guys just play for 40 minutes, going back and forth, and then game three it just comes down to like up, kind of gain life, the game's over, and I'm like, I do not like that. I just do not like that at all.
Yeah, it's
And
not great.
I get it from Konami's standpoint because they're a business, and apparently I think they're paying the judges and stuff hourly wages now, so the events need to end quicker because it's literally time is money for them. So from that standpoint, like I get it. Like I work in business myself, so I always think about like the business aspect. But from a competitive standpoint, I think is the worst aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I don't even care about the decks being powerful and killing you on turn one anymore. Like that's just whatever. Like Yu-Gi-Oh, for the most part, has always had shenanigans. Like
Hmm.
even 2010, right? 2010 Edison format is very tame, but right after Edison format, you get to Frog FTK format. And so like that's probably worse than anything that's happening right now in 2022. Because there was no hand traps in 2010 to
Yeah.
stop that shit. Like you kind of had to hope to draw double DD Crow, or you had to have like Hanewada and them to not play around. Like it was just bad. It was just not a good time. Uh, and the deck was very consistent. So I always think about every year of Yu-Gi-Oh has had something that's just like it's not very interactive. It's not very fun. Somebody might play it, like Infernity existed for a while, and then you end up with, I think the Gumblar Dragon deck was a deck for a while.
Yeah, it was.
Took your hand away turn one. Like Gravekeepers is not fair either, right? Like you get road attributed, you fucking drop all your monsters. Like you can't play the game. Like you're out the game just the same way as anybody who gets FTK. Like it's literally an FTK, especially because back then people play like 20 monsters, 20 plus monsters. So a lot of times World Tribute will literally take every card out their hand and leave them with something like a Pot of Avarice, which you also can't play. So I'm used to Yu-Gi-Oh being unfair. Like I don't think there's anything fair about Fusion Substitute. When that was the deck, like Zoo,
Yep.
that shit was ridiculous. Like that deck was broken as hell. You go first and you end up with like +5 on your opponent, and there's no possible way they could really win the game. Rabbit, turn one, rescue rabbit, turn two, tour guide, do it again. Like it's just the game has always had stuff. So while I do complain, like every other player does, like at the same time, it was enough to make me stop playing. Like all right, like I'm just going to continue to play. I think the only reason I ended up quitting Yu-Gi-Oh in 2017, I think my last event was like a Fusion Substitute Zoo. I think that was like the last time I played was Fusion Sub Zoo. The whatever that event was in Vegas that was for the belt. What do they call it? UDS.
UDS. Yeah.
I played at one of those, and I think Maxi was at two at the time. and that shit just felt like that entire format felt awful. Like winning the die roll was obviously super important, and then having hand traps, like you needed DD Crow, you needed Max C, and all this sort of stuff. It just didn't feel good. And at the same time, in real life, like outside of Yu-Gi-Oh, I started to take my career a lot more seriously as an accountant, and so those two things had like the game being really in a bad spot, and then also wanting to focus on my job made me start to pull away from Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I just completely like let go, and then it kind of went into I think 2018 is like a wild year. It's like Goki
Yeah.
and Sky Striker at full power,
There
and
was a
I think
Pendulum FTK deck in
Pendulum FTK was
2018.
big.
Yep.
I used to judge regionals, even though I quit. I would still judge my regionals,
Mm.
and yeah, there was definitely like Thunder Dragon was ridiculous. There was definitely the consistent pendulum, like dark pendulum FTK. I remember seeing a lot of that, and I was like, so that for me, when I quit and then that happened, I was like, holy shit, I'm so glad I'm not playing right now because I just watched a guy who's one of the best. Like I think Jesse Cotton was coming to those events.
Yeah.
Furman was playing in those events, and I would literally watch them get FTK'd like by somebody who they don't like know, like no one knows who this person is. It's just like he sat down, he like fucking astrograph sorcerer you, you're dead. Like you're fucking off the table, like go away.
Mhm.
So I was like, that's not. I was like, this is not it for me. Like I do not want to play in this format.
Yeah.
To be
So
fair
it,
though, Jesse Cotton FTK'd me 4 times in 2 ICSs in a row, so he deserves to
jeez.
get FTK'd a little bit.
Okay, so yeah, especially at the regional level, he can like you can take that. You can hold that. Yeah, if he FTK'd you 4 times in a
Well,
row.
yeah, so we played an FTK mirror twice in 2 ICSs in a row. So
Wow. And so you just so you didn't get to play a game against him really. Like you didn't get to take a turn
I
against.
got him once because I got to go
Okay.
first once.
Okay.
But
I was scared that you were just like
yeah,
game like the game where you got to go first, you bricked, and then he just like FTK you again. It's like God
no,
damn it,
I got to go first 2 games in one of the matches, and he like double hand trapped me and then
killed you.
OTK'd me with the
Yeah,
FTK. I was like, okay. He didn't even go to his battle
you
phase. He was like, yep, you win.
yeah, like you're just burned to death. Yeah,
Yeah.
that deck was not okay. It was so consistent.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what's scary.
yeah.
That's what's scary about some of those decks.
That was my first YCS top was with the Pen FTK.
Okay. Yeah, that I would love to see. I wanted to always get a top with something that's so non-interactive. 'Cause I just think it's funny. Just like play the most non-interactive. I think the closest is Gravekeepers because like it's as much as that deck is it's like technically a beatdown deck, right? Like it's like you just summon 2,000 attack monsters and you attack them directly, but it's also kind of FTKs you too because you can't play.
Mm.
So if you get Roy Tribute, you're just off the game. Like you may not literally be out the game, but you're not going to come back. It's impossible.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've played through so many different formats of Yu-Gi-Oh, and I think for me, like if I had to say like favorite formats, like a lot of people love goats. I don't really like goats that much. I did play in it in real, like in real life when I was like 14 or something. I played in goats for real, and I was terrible because I just was young and didn't know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh on the level I do now. And it took me a while before I realized, like after Go format had ended, I realized how to correctly play my cards conservatively and like do things properly and all that stuff. But I feel like that format is solved. Like even on the episode with Dale Bolito that we did on my podcast, we talked about like he kind of explained to me that there's a really really rough deck. It's like a warrior deck, I think,
Yeah,
and
Express Warrior.
yeah, he's like it just beats the shit out of like the regular goat decks, like the Chaos Turbo and stuff like that. Like they just can't deal with you. Just I was like, it's so weird to me in my head because that deck seemed trash. There's like playing like Kaiko and Blade
Yeah.
Knight and all these other things. It's like anti, but it's also playing all the best cards that you play too. So you guys are playing the same staples like Ring of Destruction and Snatch Steel and Soldier and all that stuff, right? But then it's just like all of its monsters are not being set. Like it's not setting Magician of Faith.
Yep.
It's not setting. It's just like I just want to kill you and I want to cross you out and just do that. So that format seems soft to me. I don't really like to go back to it as much. I know a lot of people like herald it as a great format, but me and Patrick, we both agreed that it's a format where you have a bunch of normal summons and your decision tree is so small because like what normal summon do I want to put on the field, right? And that's just kind of the extent of like you're not really outplaying people all that much. Like if you draw a pot of Graceful and you have Magician of Faith, you're gonna fucking set her. Like sure, if you want to be a cool guy, you can try to set something else to like bait a Nobleman to cross out, but in reality, like 9 times out of 10, you're just gonna be setting your Magician of Faith. Like that's what you're gonna be doing. There's certain easy rules to follow, like don't ever put your Sense of Serpent face down, clearly. unless you're going to use it for Metamorphosis. But that card ended up not being played anymore in hindsight, right? People don't even really go for Thousand Eyes Restrict like they used to. They just kind of play Chaos Sorcerers and stuff. So, but Edison, on the other hand, if you want to talk about that a bit, I don't know if you want to transition a little bit into that.
Yeah. Do we want to touch on a little bit first, um, non-Yu-Gi-Oh stuff that
Okay.
like you've been interested in? So I know in your podcast you've done quite a few different episodes on different animes,
Yes.
and other games, some trading cards, some not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so like,
So
yeah, what
I
kind
can talk
of
about that
hobbies
stuff.
are like your favorite? Like, what do you like to do outside
So
of Yu-Gi-Oh?
So I used to be a really big gamer when I was a kid. I used to play a lot of one-player games. I'm big into RPGs. So for me, I like Final Fantasy. I like the Tales games, like Tales Symphonia, Tales of Arise, stuff like that. I like all of the Tales games. I like Pokemon. Like when I grew up, I was playing Pokemon a lot. That was a big thing. Those are technically RPGs as well. And I also played a lot of Smash Bros. I still follow Smash heavily right now, like Smash Ultimate. So, like MKLA is the best player in the world in that game, and I was growing up watching Smash Melee. Uh, I used to really love Mewtwo King because he played Marth, and he was like the best Marth in the world at the time, and he was just insane. And also, I never knew what he looked like, which is so funny. Like now, he's Jason Zimmerman. He's like some white
Yep.
guy with balding hair. It's like not what I imagined. But in my head, I thought he just probably looked so cool. And I was a super fan of like Mewtwo King when I was a kid, and like all other people who played Marth. Ken, the first ever Marth that was like really the face of Smash, competitive Smash, and then going from that to like Brawl, which was just a terrible game, and Meta
Yep.
Knight was like the only real character, and then Mewtwo King was the best in that. And then we go to Smash 4, and then there's Zero, who wins like 66 tournaments straight. I follow that a lot. And then with Smash Ultimate, like my favorite players are Leo, because I feel like you just can't root against that guy. Like he's insane.
He's
I
really
like,
nice too. Yeah.
yeah, he's super nice, super humble.
Mm.
And he supports his family with like his winnings and stuff, which I think is so noble and so cool. Like I wish I could do
Yep.
something like I wish that Yu-Gi-Oh had enough, prize structure where you could win a 50K, like first place is 50K. Like at Summit, he literally won $49,000, and that's insane.
Yep.
So I follow Smash competitively, even though I'm not a competitive player myself. Like I play casually with my friends, and I've never had the time to like really take it seriously because there was always Yu-Gi-Oh. So it's like impossible for me anyway. I don't have the bandwidth to devote to like being competitive because when I want to compete in something, I'm like super about it. Like I really go hard. I want to play for hours. I want to talk about it for hours. I want to like try out all these different things. I go like crazy,
I'm
obsessive.
yeah, I'm the same way. My wife and I started playing pickleball
Mhm.
actually lately, which is like a little mini tennis with a wiffle ball. And I just started watching a bunch of pickleball videos. There's like pro tours. We have courts by our house. I want to go there all the time. When it's nice outside during the summers, I play like 5, 6 days a week. And she's just like, "You're way more into this than I am." I was like, "Yeah, I get like that. If I find
Yeah,
something, I just go in on it."
yeah, I'm the same way. I just really go in. So I always had Smash as like, yeah, I want to beat my friends and stuff because that's the people who I primarily play. But I'm not about to start flying the tournaments for that too, and then
Yeah.
be half-ass Yu-Gi-Oh, half-ass Smash, and not good at either of them. So I just focus all my time on Yu-Gi-Oh, but I will play Smash every once in a while. So that's something I still do. I just kind of follow it. I watch all the events. Like last week, there was a Collision. I think it was called Collision. There was an event, and Spargo won. It's like his third tournament in a row that he's won. He's also been beating Leo lately. So a lot of people are wondering,
Yep.
like, is he finally the best player in the world? Because we know it's going to happen eventually. Even Leo said it himself. Like this kid is only 16 years old, and
Yep.
he's insane. And he's doing it with fucking Cloud of all characters, but not to get too detailed into that. I love Smash. So that's one of the big things I like. I also love Monster Hunter. I've been playing Monster Hunter since I was a young teenager. I used to play it on the steps until like 2 a.m. And I even got picked up by the police before because I was like 15 years old walking home from my friend's house at 3 a.m. And it was like a curfew in Philadelphia where if you were under 18, you had to be indoors or accompanied by an adult if you were to be out the house after, I forget what time it was. It was something ridiculous, like 10 p.m. or something. I just wasn't trying to hear that. We would always like sit on the steps, we play Yu-Gi-Oh for hours, then we switch to Monster Hunter, we play that for hours, and then I go home and it'd be like 3 a.m. This is the summertime, of course, like so I'm not in school. And I'd just be walking home, and the fucking one time the police picked me up and were like, "How old are you?" And I was like, 15, and they're like, "Get in the car." And I was like, "All right." Well, and they dropped me off, took me home, and my grandma was like, "I'll talk to his mom and dad about this," but she just didn't. She was like I told you, you can't stay out that late, but I don't know. I loved back in the day, just like playing Yu-Gi-Oh on the steps, playing Monster Hunter on the steps outside, and people walk past and like they'd be like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" Like random human beings, just if you play Yu-Gi-Oh in public, people who don't know what it is, they're like, "Oh, I got that blue eyes white dragon, I got Dark Magician," and they're just like trolling you.
Yep.
I went through a lot of that as a kid, but I never cared about the fact that I played. Like I never hid it. Even in high school and stuff, like I bring my cards with me, like in my book bag, like I'd have them on me because I like play Yu-Gi-Oh after school. But like we play Monster Hunter a lot, and we discuss things like anime. So like I really liked Naruto back then. That's when it was still good. And we talk about all the fights. We talk about Bleach, and that like both of those every week on Thursdays we'd read the manga and then call each other and just talk about everything that happened, talk about what we think is going to happen. So that's why like the I'm There podcast for me is pretty much everything that's happened in my life as far as like nerd culture, which is primarily all of it, just being put and verbalized, like all of my like all the nostalgia of those days when I would just in the summertime sit on the stuff with my friends and just talk about like what do you think is going to happen with the Akatsuki, like what do you think is going to happen with the Espada, like what do you think Aizen's real plan is, and all of that stuff. Like a really really nerdy, just that was like my whole life at the time. And those days were much simpler before you had to work, before you had to like get up super early, take care of yourself, feed yourself, all that stuff. Like it's just
Yeah.
like the easy days. I miss those times, as you could probably hear. But yeah, it's yeah, outside of Yu-Gi-Oh nowadays though, so like the age I am now, so I primarily just when I'm not working, uh yeah, I used to play a trading card game, or not a trading card game, a deck building game called DC Deck Building, and that game is fun as hell. I recommend it to people. It's really fun, and it has a competitive scene. It has a Discord where they have like their own rule set and a cube that they follow. So I played in that for a while, and during the pandemic, me and my one friend Luke Feeney actually played so hardcore that we broke the game. Like we found out the best teams to play, the best cards to buy all the time. So we knew exactly like how to win a lot, and we became the first and second ranked player in the just like in that community. So we completely took over like DC deck building, like the Discord and everything. Like I am ranked number 2, he's ranked number 1, and we just like can't we applied the mindset of like broken Yu-Gi-Oh. Like this team is not interactive, right? Like this wins pretty much turn 1. Um, so we did that. We like that, and that's what I did like 2020, like when we were all in house, like we just focused, we just went ham on DC. Like we played that game every single day, nonstop. And I was working from home, so it made it super easy to like test and stuff, and figured out some crazy teams. Like I broke the format a couple times, and so that felt really good to be basically like the Patrick Hoban of another world. That's how I felt. It was like I literally have like one of the teams I made, which is so insane, and it got banned. Like that, it got banned after a while, but it was just like so insane, and it was scary because in that game, only one person can play a team per table. So like if somebody drafted it before you, then like they just have that team, and the team wasn't really beatable. So once someone had it, like once it was known about, like you got one tournament with it, which I ended up winning, and then after that, it's going to be pretty toxic because then everyone at the table trying to play that one team. So, but that was fun, and we continued to break the format every 3 months. It would change, and we would break it again every single time. And one of the people from my group, just 4 of us, we would win every single tournament. This went on for 2 years. We just won every single tournament. And this was like I wasn't even really posting about it on like Facebook or anything like that. Like most people didn't even know. I also went by a different name in the Discord so that way like people, I didn't want anyone to like know who I was or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of be like low key. I didn't want to be bothered as like Frazier or anything like that. I just wanted to like completely play this game. I completely separated myself from Yu-Gi-Oh. I was like I knew that there were some people who play Yu-Gi-Oh in the Discord, right? So I was like I want to just completely hide away from like that whole, I don't want that whole like, because the other thing about that game is that there's 4 people usually at a table, and you can kind of target one person if you want. Like people can pretty much jump you. So I was like, well, if people like know that I'm like a smart card player, like they're going to immediately always have suspicion on me. They're always going to like want to get me out the game first, or like put me like do things that would hurt my game, as opposed to just like playing all of us as equals. So I was like, it's from my own competitive like standpoint, I was like, people knowing it's me is actually bad because they're gonna like he's smart, like he knows what the fuck he's doing. Like get him out the game, like focus on him. Even if you think he's not doing anything right now, he's gonna come from behind because he's that kind of guy. So luckily I was able to like hide myself away, and eventually they realized like even though they have like still no idea, they realize like that fucking guy is ridiculously good, and we need to like every time I'm in a match nowadays, like they know like get him out. Like he like if you can, right? Like if you can get him out, like if you have an opportunity to like to spite Frazier, then do it. So it's really funny how that just like I knew it would happen eventually because like you know we're ranked 1 and 2, so it's only so long before people are like, yo, these guys fucking win every tournament. Like, what is going on? Like they win every single time. Like like how like something is clearly up. Like get them out. But yeah, I love DC, love Monster Hunter. Um, I think during the pandemic, like Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and I played that game like crazy. I actually ended up that was the first game I ever got 100% on like my PlayStation account. Where like I never 100% of the game. Like I pretty much played them, I beat them, and then I'm done with it. But that game I actually went out of my way to get 100% in because I just enjoyed it so much. I was a big Final Fantasy VII fan as a kid, and I'm a big Final Fantasy fan in general. So as long as it's not the online MMA or MMO versions of the game, I'll play it. But yeah, so I guess for me, the other things that like I've been into, obviously like the I have the podcast that takes up a lot of my time nowadays. And I watch a lot of anime still. Death Note's my favorite anime. I also like My Hero Academia. I've been reading the manga for that, and it's just great. That I love the show. I love that anime a lot. I think it's pretty good. And I also like all the Marvel stuff too, right? Like so everything that everyone else is watching, like Infinity War, Endgame, all the Marvel shows, Loki and stuff like that. Like I've been watching those. And they're pretty cool. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, really. Like, they're just okay to me. I think that the most insane things that I've seen so far is just like, Infinity War Endgame and what else was really good? Like Spider-Man was insane, but that's because it was 20 years in the making, right? So like I grew up on the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire.
Yep.
And to see 20 years later, like him back on the screen as Spider-Man is like insane for me. But people who were born way after that, never seen that Spider-Man, I never really cared about it. It probably doesn't hit as hard, but that's like one of the best movies of all time to me, just because like nostalgia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that like those like 3 Marvel movies, like Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, are just crack. But I really don't care for like a lot of the other ones. I just can kind of watch them like just because I need to for the whole overall story. But I don't really.
Yeah.
It's like to me, anime to me is so much better than like American made shows. Like I just rarely find something that's made by like made here or made by us in the United States that's as good as something made by Japanese or Europeans, like Game of Thrones and stuff. I guess George R. R. Martin is from here, but all the actors are fucking like European. Just they make the show what it is. Like I don't think that the show would be as good if Peter Dinklage was not Tyrion, if Cersei was not played by Lena Headey, and everybody else like Kit Harington playing Jon Snow. Like I love Game of Thrones, big fan of that show. Even though it ended terribly, like I love the show because the first like 5 or 6 seasons are really good. But yeah, the podcast definitely made my life a lot more busy, and I thought there'd be no way I could ever play Yu-Gi-Oh again anyway because of the podcast. Because like it's already a commitment to do that. I still work full time, 40 hours a week, and then trying to do Yu-Gi-Oh on top of that is like overkill. But I'm kind of doing it now a little bit with Edison, so it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I still find time somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you had to pick one anime to recommend to somebody who's never watched any before, what one would it be?
I just got this question yesterday, interestingly enough, and it's Death Note.
Death Note?
It's only 37 episodes, so it's not super long. I would never recommend something like One Piece as someone's first anime. Like I love One Piece. I don't like the anime really.
Episodes?
It's 1,000 episodes, yeah. And I just think that's like overkill because it's just so intimidating to start something that's 1,000 episodes. You're just gonna feel like, even though to me, One Piece is the best manga I've ever read. I don't really care for the anime because it looks terrible, but the manga is insane. And now the anime looks a lot better. In 2022, they have a better budget and they have like I guess like better animators now. But if you go back to like old One Piece, it just does not look good at all. And that, I think the art style turns a lot of people off from it because it just doesn't look like it's serious. But when you actually like read it, it's one of the absolute best things. But Death Note for me, because it's only 37 episodes, and because I feel like it's not too out there, like at the end of the day, L and Light are two humans, right? Like they're humans, and yeah, there's death gods and stuff like that, but they're not even the main part of the show. It's really just like a drama about two geniuses going back and forth trying to kill each other. And so I really, really like it. It's my favorite, and I like all of the cerebral anime like Code Geass and everyone where the main character is literally a fucking genius.
That's
It's
my
insane.
favorite one.
So good. Lelouch is insane. Like I love those. I always think like Light, L, Lelouch, like those kind of guys, like all duking it out. Like who's the smartest? But yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, I've been asking people that lately because all my friends talk about all these animes that they watch, and it's just the one thing that I haven't really done before. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
figured I should start somewhere probably. But awesome. Yeah. Let's talk Edison.
Okay.
So you
This is the love
mentioned.
of my life right now. This is the absolute, because like at the end of the day, I can never deny that I love Yu-Gi-Oh. And even when I quit, so I quit in 2017. And so from 2017 until I just started back playing Yu-Gi-Oh in 2022. So it's been at least 5 years. Um, so for me, Edison format is like I played I played in that tournament. I didn't think anything of it at the time, and I didn't think anything of it after it was over either. It just kind of was like a time period that happened. But somehow, some way, Sean McCabe came to locals, and apparently everyone at my local had already been agreeing upon playing it. I didn't even know that, and he like came one day, gave me a deck, gave me Diva Hero. I was like, just play this. I already put you in a tournament. I already paid for your entry. Like, you're gonna play, and you're gonna fucking like it. And I had already told, like, he had tried to. So I guess to give more context before we get into like full Edison format, McCabe had tried to come back to Yu-Gi-Oh as it is currently, and he failed. Um, he went to locals. He was playing like the Shadal Invoke deck or whatever. This is like months ago, by the way. This is when like Tri Brigade was like at full power. This is when Drytron was at full power. This is like that format. So like last year in like the middle of the year, I want to say around that time when I think that sounds about right. Like Tri Brigade's like
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah. It would have been like
uh,
early fall or like
yeah
late
like some
summer
yeah I feel like it was like
time-ish.
late summer. So he tried to come back, and I used to come to locals just to like hang out with everybody. Like Silverman's there, like all my friends are there. But I would laugh at him every week because he just didn't know what all the cards did, and it would be funny when his opponent would play like fucking Eldritch or something.
Answer your question.
Alexa, stop. I don't know why she activated it. Sorry. But he would go to locals and he would play his deck, and he was playing Shadal because he played an actual Shadal format 2014.
Yeah.
So it was like it's not too foreign to him, even though the deck has gotten power crept and it's really strong now. Windows really at the time, Window was really, really good. And he would just get creamed almost every round to like just something that he just had no idea what the cards did. And every week this would continue because he would only play on Thursday nights. And so he came to the realization like, holy shit, not only can I don't feel like reading all of these cards because every card has a book worth of text on it. But then the other thing was like, I don't want to have to learn all these different interactions. And then it was just a lot. It was overwhelming. And we joked about it a lot, like how every card is just like a book. And then if you have to read it during the middle of a match, like you're probably already lost because like you don't know what the fuck is going on. And so he quit. He played for like literally maybe a month and a half, and he quit. And then he was like, at first I was like, man, that kind of sucks because he stopped coming to locals too. And I really liked the part where he was coming to local because at least like even if he was losing in current Yu-Gi, I didn't care. I was just like, I want everybody to be there. But then like a month after that, he's like, yeah, I heard that like we may be able to run old formats. And so when Edison thing came up, Konami put out that email and stuff, my local started running actual tournaments, and he gave me a deck. And my first week I played and I went X and 1, like my first tournament playing Yu-Gi-Oh in 5 years in Edison for like playing Yu-Gi-Oh period, but then playing Edison format, I went X and 1, and I'd only lost a game 3 to my opponent flipping oppression, like turn 1, and I just immediately scooped because in my hand, I don't think I had like a Raiko or anything, like I couldn't deal with it. And I was like, all right, I'm not even gonna waste your time. Like I summoned Cyber Dragon, you want oppression, and my hand's kind of weak, if I'm being honest. I think I had like double Infernal Prodigy and Caius or some shit.
Mm.
I was like, my hand's weak. You're playing Vayu Turbo. It doesn't like oppression doesn't affect you at all. Like I'm gonna die. So I just like to save us time. I'm just gonna scoop. But I ended up doing well that first week back, and then I immediately like got the dopamine rush. Like it just felt like riding a bike. I just everything just started coming back to me. Like shuffling cards felt good, and then calculating life and rolling dice to decide who goes first. And you know, the idea of priority is so wild to me though. Like I remember the one round, actually round one that I played, a guy goes summon dark armed, and I have like bottomless and I think Starlight Road set. And I was about to flip bottomless immediately, but luckily for me, he went summon dark arm priority effect. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh my god, this format has priority. I forgot all about that concept. Like that is just a completely foreign concept to me now. Because it's been almost 10 years since priority existed. Maybe it actually probably has been 10 years since priority. So I was blown away by the idea of that. And I was going to flip bottomless, like I said, immediately, but luckily he went priority target. He like pointed to bottomless and I was like, chain it. I would have lost the game if he had been like priority target your face down monster. And or if he didn't say priority and I went bottoms and he's like, okay, well, I'll just pop your monster with priority or something. But luckily he I didn't get scumbagged, I guess. So I got lucky there. But after that happened, I was like, oh, this format is wild. Like priority is insane. You draw 6 going first, which is nuts.
Yeah.
So going first is like going first is insane in this format. Like it's so ridiculous. You get to go first. You get to set your monster before theirs. If you're playing a deck that does set monsters, you get to draw 6 immediately. So there's no incentive to really go second. Like there's no such thing as a go second deck in this format. Like I don't think there's any deck that's strong enough to justify going second. I don't even care if your deck can OTK consistently. You still just go first, and then you just get a 7th card, and you probably just still OTK them. So it doesn't make sense to ever not go first. I feel like.
Yeah.
But
for priority, so I think I played like one local tournament when priority existed because that was right when I just started playing at all, not even
yeah,
competitively. So I read something the other day that like kind of messed with my understanding of it. It's not necessarily just like the monster you summon has an ignition effect and you have priority to use it. It's if you perform an action, at resolution of that action, you have priority to activate any ignition effect, right? So like if you
yep,
had Mally in Grave, you could summon Dad and use priority to activate the Mally,
yep,
which is
Crazy. I
yeah.
didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's not like for the it's not the monster has priority, it's that the player has ignition effect priority in like most open game states or something. And it's
Yeah,
just
that's exactly how
that
it works.
blew my mind. I was like, what in the
So,
world?
for example, there was a game I was playing. I was playing the cat deck, so I was playing like Gravekeeper Spies, Descendant, and all that stuff, and Rescue Cat and Summon and Monk that deck. And I think Billy Brick got top 4 at the actual Edison Championship with that deck, so people were familiar with that. Anyways, I had a Descendant on the field, Gravekeeper's Descendant, and I literally went normal summon Gravekeeper Spy, priority Descendant, and the guy was confused. He's like, "What? Like, how do you have priority with the guy that you're not summoning Descendant? He's already on the field." I was like, "Yeah, but I performed a normal summon, and I'm using priority with this guy. I'm going to tribute for cost, and I'm going to pop your back row." He's like, "That's broken." I was like, "Yeah, it's very broken. Summon Dark Arm, kill you." Like, he's like, "Wow, that is just not okay." So people don't actually know how it works, and I haven't even really like discussed that with anybody because not many people know that. Like, not many people know that you just have like priority. Period. Another thing that people don't realize is that you also have priority when you enter a phase, right? Like
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people aren't aware of that aspect of the game. Like if
Mm-hmm.
so, like Trap Dust Shoots in this format, really toxic card and probably one of the most powerful cards in the entire format. But every format has a really toxic card, right? Like Imperial Order existed in you guys' format for the last like 2 years or some shit, and
Awful.
the card is so bad for the game. So Trap Dust Shoot is the version of that card in Edison. It's like your opponent's hand, you also get to fuck their hand up. Anyway, a lot of people like to hold their Dust Shoot, and so like I was playing against one of my friends, and he wanted to get all cute and not play Dust Shoot in the draw phase. Like, I just think that I just want to just Dust Shoot you immediately. Like I just want to know all of your cards because I feel like I'm a good player. I can just like if I know your hand, it's a super high chance I'm just gonna win. I don't want you to start setting monsters and setting back row. Then I'm like, oh, I'll Dust Shoot you before you go lower than 4 cards. So I just Dust Shoot on the draw phase, and but he was like, I want to bait out MST and all this other stuff, and I was like, okay, you do that. And so he like we're playing, and I'm playing Hero Beat, and I go draw phase, stand my phase, anything. And he's like, no. I go main phase, Summer Stratos, and he was like, I was gonna priority like I was gonna trap Dust Shoot you on your main phase, and I was like, well, once I enter main phase, you can't. because I'm using my like turn play player. I'm summoning shadows, and he's like, "Oh, well, that fucking sucks." And I was like, "Yeah." It was like you should have just, if you wanted to dust shoot me, like you should have done it earlier, or you could wait until I play like a Rhoda or something. But like that's risky. And I told him, I was like, I just value knowing they're 6. Like I just want to know your whole 6. I don't value this whole like trying to get extra value out of dust shoot. It's already so powerful of a card. And I don't need to bait out your fucking MST. Like I don't need to bait out your Heavy Storm or anything. Like, I just want to see your whole hand. Like I just want to know every card you have, and I'm just gonna structure my plays around your hand and just win the game. And 99% of the times, that's exactly what happens. I haven't had any piss poor results with that. And like, yeah, if you know what you're playing against, then you can hold dust shoot. So like sometimes if I know I'm playing against a deck that's like Neuralis
Mhm.
or Dragon Turbo, those decks, because they always have such a big hand and they need their hand to like play the game, like they need to do like these crazy combos that require a lot of their cards. You can hold dust shoot in those matchups and like hit them in their linchpin, you know, in the middle of their combo and stuff, and it messes them up really bad. But I don't fuck around when it comes to that card with like regular. Like if I don't know what you're playing, I'm playing it immediately. I just want it because I also just tells me, oh, you're playing Glad Beast. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Now I know. So yeah, but yeah, Edison format is wild. The priority is wild. Going first and drawing 6 is wild. But the decks are also shit that it makes it fun because you get so many turns,
Yep.
and like you rarely get completely blown out turn 1 or turn 2. Like it's just so hard to just blow your opponents out. Even when your hand is super nice, it's still rare to like completely blow them out. And like when you do get blown out, it's usually by, for me, I noticed like Diva Hero is the most popular deck, even though I don't think that deck is like the best. But it is like the most popular deck, I think. Going by the last tournament that was 144 players, RBET won. Um, and I understand like what it does. It's basically like an OTK deck in disguise because if it draws the right combination of cards, it consistently will kill you on turn 2. It's like it goes turn 1 like Stratos, like Surge Militias, and then it'll set like a Wing Blast, and then plays 3 of all these cards. It also plays 3 Kaias usually. And so on turn 2, you get like destroyed when they go Wing Blast your back row, like when you're end phase, and then they like Kaias your monster, or they just go like Diva, Malicious, Miracle Fusion, and you like die. And so it can kill you like pretty easily, or set you up so bad that like you're drawing the same card, which is a trap, and then they overwhelmed you with a crazy feel, and you just lose the game that way. But there's so many decks in a format, and like all of them have their strengths and weaknesses, and so it's really an unsolved format even still. And I feel like every tournament, it probably get closer and closer to people realizing like what we should be doing. But it's just really hard to tell like what is the best deck because in this format, traps are very, very good,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
it
I
pains me
know.
to. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so like you in the Edison one that you had recently, the podcast, talked about like the top 5 decks. It was like the fairy deck. I thought that was pretty interesting. There's like a deck I hadn't really heard of.
Yeah,
That played like the orange lights and stuff like that, and then like a couple Blackwing variants, and then the hero deck that you said also.
yeah, Hero Beat. So Dale was saying that the fairy deck is actually pretty good, and I did get a chance to test it last week, and it is actually pretty good. Um, it's the only deck that has a hand trap too, which is interesting.
Yep.
So like that deck is pretty decent. It has a lot of good things going for it. Obviously, it has its own problems. You can end up going over your fairy count, and then all your Christies are dead, and then you're relying on specific cards to like get your fairy count down, like Free the Brave Wanderer or Soul of Purity and Light. Uh, so that like those are like frustrating things I noticed about the deck. And then sometimes that's with every deck because the old Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have as much searching your deck for what you need. You have to like raw draw a lot of your stuff.
Yep.
And if you don't raw draw Christia, because there's no way to search her. Like if you don't raw draw her, your deck is just kind of meh. And it's like, this is a bunch of small guys that usually is not enough to get there. You do need your boss at some point. And the deck doesn't
Mhm.
like synchro or anything. It doesn't tribute for Kaias. It doesn't do any of that stuff. So it's pretty much an all-in Christia strategy, in my opinion. And that can be rough. Like the other decks have so many other win conditions, right? Like they can dark arm you, they can malicious and make level 8 synchros, and then make another synchro like Brionic and something, and then Miracle Fusion and stuff like that. And they do turbo, same thing. Like it can dark arm you and then start banishing, summoning a bunch of synchros. Even the Rescue Cat decks, like Rescue Cat is just so strong of a card. Taking your opponent's hand away, where Erebellum is really strong, Arcanite Magician is really strong, Cold Wave is really strong. And Flamvel makes a bunch of level 8 synchros. It plays probably one of the best cards in the format, Rekindling, which is Soul Charge.
Yep.
So there's a lot of like Glad Beasts. They get Heraclinos out and they get a Chariot, or if they just get Chariot, a lot of times that's just too much because there's no card in the format quite like Chariot.
Yep.
Like it makes Glad Beasts very appealing to me because it's also a deck that, unlike every other deck, it does actually search itself, like all of its cards. Like, I kind of have access to all of my cards with either a Test Tiger or a Battle Phase. So that deck is pretty good in my opinion. And yeah, the Neuralis deck is playing borderline current Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not trying to duel you at all. Game 1 is usually free because it has so many blowouts, and Future Fusion is ridiculous. I think Future Fusion is the best card in the format. Like in actuality, I think it's the best. Like it's like as good as Trap Dust is. It's still like a trap. It's still a, if you go first, it's really strong. Going second, a lot of times it's not. And Future Fusion is just broken. Going first, going second doesn't matter, especially if your deck is playing dragons. Like Future Fusion for 5 dragons is so ridiculous. Um, so that deck is like really, really strong to me because it's not trying to play Edison format. It's actually trying to play like fucking, I don't even know, but like it's just not trying to duel you at all. Like it's just trying to win the game turn 1, but it has a really big weakness, and the weakness is that it cannot side deck. And I think that is like very important because everyone's probably siding multiple copies of DD Crow, the only hand trap in the format that's real. And it really does ruin that deck like a lot. So to me, it's like as good as that deck is game 1, it's probably one of the worst decks games 2 and 3. So there's like it's like, you have to figure out what you put more value on. I feel like when you're playing that format, like do you value winning game 1 consistently, like a lot of the time, especially if you win a die roll. God, if you win a die roll with Neuralis, it's like pretty much over. And or do you put more value on having a deck that's just like kind of consistent throughout, can side deck a lot of cards for different matchups, and it doesn't have like necessarily bad matchups, but like it's just what you value. What you value more? Like the Neuralis deck almost won the last tournament. It got 3rd place.
Mhm.
I'm not surprised by that because again, it's not trying to play the same game as everyone else. Like I bought it to my local and I went undefeated. It was the first week I went undefeated. It took me like a month. I kept going X1 at my local every single week in Edison format. And like after a month, I finally fucking put it together in the Neuralis deck, and it just, I mean, no one was prepared for it. Like they didn't have anything really sided for it outside of DD Crow. Like you have to just draw it, right? Like you have to just draw Crow, and then yeah. So I just like creamed everybody to 1 week with that, and then I switched my deck again. But I kind of switched like every tournament because I ended up spending like, I think I spent like $2,500 on buying every deck in Edison format. I went on TCG Player and I ordered literally every single deck that is playable in that format, like Frogs, Glad Beast, Lightsworn, Cat, Flamvel, Frogs, Monarchs, Dandy Warrior, Vayu Turbo, Fairies, Nularis, the Dragon Turbo, Fish FTK, like literally every single thing. And I wanted all the cards to be foil if they can be. So I ordered every card is like holographic, except Cold Wave and Spine Gilman. I think those are like the only 2 cards that don't really come
Yeah.
foil.
I think Spine Gilman comes in like that shatter foil.
That's the one I bought. Yeah,
Yeah,
I bought the best one you could, but like, yeah, everything else, yeah.
I'm
I
the
bought,
opposite of you. I'm going for like lowest rarity of everything, so I
yeah,
don't have to spend money on these old
yes.
formats,
Well,
and it's
so if
still
Edison
expensive.
format, it is. If Edison format ever ends and we go to another format, I'm not doing that again because I realized that that's just going to be me buying every format of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like it keeps like, oh, next we play 2011 plans and then we play 2014 nationals. Like if that happens, then it's like there's no way I'm doing this every time. Like that's just going to be insane. Because then cards are also at the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's really interesting. Like I don't want to buy every format like foiled out everything, but I did like max rarity my extra deck for Edison. Or I should say kind of max rarity because I don't like ghost rares. I just me and Silverman, we like hate them. I think me, Silverman, and McKay, we all hate ghost rares.
I'm not a fan.
And so ulti is like to me the highest rarity. I love ulti cards. I think ulti cards look fucking insane. And so having my whole deck ulti, like my Stardust, my Colossal, my Catastor, Thought Ruler, Archfiend, Black Rose Dragon, Ancient Fairy Dragon, like it just Goyo Guardian, they just all look so cool ulti. So when I spread my extra deck, usually I just play my extra deck when my opponent's taking their turn. Like I just fucking keep on fanning it out and putting it back. But I just love the way ultis look. And Edison has a lot of good ultis because like now Kai, like it wasn't out at the time, but like now Caius is ulti and Dark Arm is ulti. And yeah, so it just has a lot of cool looking cards. that didn't necessarily exist at that actual time. So, and everything is hollow now. Like everything comes hollow now. As in 2010 when the format was actually played, like that wasn't the way it was. Now you have like Ulti Stratos. That wasn't a thing. Like Stratos is Ulti now, and so I think the Stratos looks really cool Ulti. And yeah, but yeah, Edison format is really fun, and I recommend everyone to try it because there's a deck for everyone. There's like so many of them. I think I named like 15 a second ago,
Yeah.
and those aren't even all. I didn't even get all of them. Like
Yeah,
there's still so many.
I don't even think you named the deck that won the actual tournament, right?
Yeah, like
The Dandy Quick Draw Synchro deck.
yeah, exactly. Like that's a deck too, and it's just like there's so many. There's like volcanic decks that play like Blaze Accelerator, and those decks are actually playable.
Yeah.
There's
The
all kinds
gadget
of
deck.
insane decks. Gadget, yes, gadgets are strong too. Solidarity is a crazy card. That card's fucking wild. Like all your gadgets go from being nothing to being 2,000 plus attack power normal summons that replace themselves. Like it just gets out of hand.
Yeah.
And so, and Ultimate Offering's that too. So like,
Yep.
because I was wondering when I started the format, I was like, okay, there's no way gadgets are good. But then I started looking at what cards are available. I'm like, your Ultimate Offering at 2 is kind of crazy though. Like that's just like I remember how I got X and 2 at that event. Like it's you fucking summon Gear Frame, which is a Stratos, right? For one of the best boss monsters in the format. Like Machina Fortress is a crazy card. Like that card is so outrageously good and it's so easy to summon. And it makes all your dead gadgets like they have value now because you can just discard them to summon that. So that deck is like actually not bad. And I've been testing that too, like recently. And I was like, damn, I actually kind of like it, especially with the hindsight of 2022 knowledge, where like every deck needs to be playing to me, like most decks outside of that Amorales burn, Phoenician Cluster Amorales, there's like a burn deck that topped as well that last tournament. But every deck pretty much needs to be playing 3 upstarts. And when I control F the Edison top 16 deck list from the actual event, and Upstart Goblin was not played in a single one of them. So
That's
that
crazy.
I know, right? Like it's just the thing about how far back the game was, like as far as what people understood and what we know now, you can correct 99% of the decks by just putting 3 upstarts in them. Like just that alone is enough to fix the decks. And or like to begin to fix the decks, I mean.
Yeah.
And so that's like one of the first things I do is like, okay, like what are the 3 worst cards I can cut? Like what should this guy have not been playing? And I just put 3 upstarts in, and that's like the beginning, and then you go from there. So that it's just really cool to see like the way we used to think, and then the way people think now, and how like some of the things that people value. Like people back then used to really be heavy on like this whole idea of card advantage, and I just want to be +1 or +2 on you. But then like, okay, that's cool, but like winning the game is so much better. And sometimes you can just overwhelm your opponent turn 1 and they can't deal. Like for example, I was playtesting until 5 a.m. with like McCabe and Silverman on Friday night going into Saturday, and we were playing Fairies, Neuralis, Glad Beast, and like Hero Beat, and just like move like we were just passing the decks to each other. Like I'll play this one now, and like we just playing each other. It was like it was 4 of us total, and we would just like switch the decks around, and we would find out that like I was playing the Neuralis deck one of the games. I was playing his Glad Beast, and I'm just like turn 1 Future Fusion, and then I go summon Dark Arm, summon Brionic, pass. You fucking and he just like what like I can't deal with that. Like that's entirely too much. I was like, yeah, like summon these 2 turn 1. Like before you can set any traps, like I just summon these 2, I'll go. And it's just like I don't even have a hand. Like I use my entire hand to like do my play. It's like Greffer, discard some Plague Spreader, stack card on top for Plague Spreader, synchro into that, like summon Dark Arm out my hand. Like I had no cards, but I'm like going to draw to 1. And then I have Brionic, Dark Arm, and then like I have all these dragons engraved and everything. And I'm just like, pop all your back row. He set 4 set of monster and like pop all your back row, like kill you. It's like, yeah, that was just too much. Like, what the fuck? Like, why'd you summon it? Because like the one guy who is not like known, we're like in a way kind of teaching him. So he's like, why did you summon all that shit out turn 1 like that? And I was like, well, what can you do? Like you have to draw a brain control, right? Like he's like, yeah. I was like, so you need 1 card, and if you don't get that card, I was like, go ahead, you could pick your hand. Like you don't get that 1 card, like you're dead. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. I was like, yeah, you can't deal. And so like that's the mindset of like, recent Yu-Gi-Oh where you just overwhelm the field. It's like, holy shit, I have to deal with all of this. And if I don't, I was like, if you left up the Brionic or the Dark Arm, like you're probably just dead. Because like I also have like the Red Eyes coming out too on the next turn once I have a normal summon. So there's like that problem's coming as well. So yeah, it's just really fun. it's really fun playing. It's really fun trying to do stuff and seeing how like you can apply your knowledge from now to then, from a deck building perspective, also from a technical play perspective,
Yeah.
and then learning some other things like priority is interesting too.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a list of the top 16 lists. Not the lists, like the decks themselves. There were 8 different decks in top 16, which I thought was pretty cool. Between like the Flamvel Synchro, the Dandy Synchro, there's a
Mhm.
Gravekeepers, 2 Gadgets. There's a Blackwing deck that wasn't quite the same as the Vayu Turbo that we see now. But
Yeah, it was like actual Blackwing. I forgot
yeah,
that. That's another deck that you could play. I forgot the
yeah,
name.
yeah. There's Gladbeast, the Synchro Cat, and then there were 4 Lightsworn variants in top 16, and like one of them was like a Monarch variant. Like, oh, so
Oh yeah, Jarrell.
yeah,
Yeah.
of those 8 decks, let's say we did like a YCS Edison format now, and it was like competitive in the current 2022 meta. Which of those do you think wouldn't be as represented? Like, which of
Uh,
those decks are like not good?
Good. Yep, I can tell you. I'm very blunt about this too. I think that the quick draw deck is terrible. The deck is fucking unplayable, and it's actually like I won the event, but it also went against gadgets in the finals,
Mm,
and like it also was playing against a lot of other people who just keep setting monsters over and over again. And so one of the first things I noticed about this format is that everyone loves the set. Like people love setting Raikou. It's the most fucking set monster in the game. I feel like every time I play a face down monster, it's just Raikou.
Mhm.
So between like Raikou and Spy, a lot of people just like setting monsters, and that's cool and all, but you know how in current Yu-Gi-Oh, that's just not a thing, right? Like setting is just bad. And I also kind of think setting is not that good in Edison either. And so the quick draw deck doesn't do anything face up really. Like for a while, it kind of like tries to grind you out of cards, and then it wants to summon Drill Warrior. But I'm gonna be honest with you, quick draw Synchron is one of the worst cards in the entire format. It is so fucking bad. How but that card is awful, and the
Yeah, you
only
have to
time it's
draw it with
good,
Dandy.
you have
Yeah.
to. It's so unplayable if you don't draw with Danny specifically. So like that deck is so weird because that's the deck that won the event, right? It was
Mhm.
being piloted by one of the best players. And
yeah,
then on top of
that
that,
helps.
yeah, that helps a lot. And then on top of that, like the knowledge was just not there for people to understand like what they should be doing. DD Crow, now that everyone knows like DD Crow's broken, like I start all my side decks off with 3 DD Crow. Like every side deck in my Edison format, because I'm not trying to lose to Neuralis. I'm not trying to lose to Quick Draw and be embarrassed by it. A lot of people like to play Pot of Avarice in their slow ass cat decks and stuff like that. And I'm just like, no. Debris Dragon also no. Like Crow just like ruins so many decks. Like it just hurts so bad. Like even Miracle Fusion, like no. If you summon Diva and your malicious is still sitting in the grave, like no. Like just so many things. So for me, I don't think that Quick Draw will survive with the hindsight we have now. Is like people know about Crow. Um, Crow's also so good that it can be main decked, right? So you can start to make the format kind of toxic. You can start to make it really 2022. Once we get there, I don't think we're there yet. But once the format starts to get really more established, I really do think that DD Crow in the main deck is going to be a thing and not a meme. Um, it's just that you don't want to have that card against something like Glad Beast right now,
Right.
which is still like represented. So it's still like some kinks to iron out. You need to get the format more focused. And right now it's still very all over the place.
Mhm.
But I do
Yeah,
think
that's why
Crow
people
is
like it, right? Overall,
that is
there's just
that
so
is why
many
people
decks.
like it. But the goal when you break a format is to make it where it's like solidarity, right? Like it's
Yep.
just supposed to be one thing or like maybe 2 things at most, but typically you're trying to get it to a point where like this is the best deck and all other decks are inferior. And so we haven't reached that point of like, singularity where it's just this is it. Like this is Edison format. This is how it should have been, but we were all slow, and that's fine. Uh I don't think the answer is Absolute Zero. I think that card is whatever. I think Absolute Zero as a card is mediocre. I think that
Mhm.
Miracle Fusion is even worse. I think
Ooh,
Miracle
that's a hot
Fusion.
take.
Yeah, I don't like Miracle Fusion because I think that all water monsters in the game are terrible. I don't think you can name a good water monster in that format outside of Substitute, and it doesn't play that. So like, I really hate having to play Ocean or Bubble Man. Diva's really good, but you have to raw draw that card. And so for me, like I just really, really hate the idea of the Diva Hero deck because you have to like draw all your pieces. And I talk about this in my own podcast as well. You have to draw the hero engine, you have to draw the water engine, and you also have to draw miracle fusions for your deck to be good. And if you don't
Yep.
do those things, then your deck is just falls apart so fast. Like Evil Hero Infernity Prodigy, And it's just like an Aqua card without Caius. Like you just have it. It's just like, ugh, this card sucks. Like I don't know. I just have a lot of gripes with that. But I think Quick Draw will be the out of those decks, the 8 that you named, Quick Draw is probably the worst one. And then you named Lightsworn.
Mhm.
I don't think Lightsworn is good in Edison format, but it's one of those decks where if it's your day, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it could be nuts because every time you play Solar Recharge, you could either draw your wolves or you can mill your wolves. And there's no telling which one is you're going to do. So if it's a day where you keep milling your wolves, as opposed to if your draw two is draw 2 real cards, mill the wolves, as opposed to draw the wolves and mill the real cards, then like your day is great. If the opposite happens, right? Because it could just be the opposite, then you're screwed. So I can't play a tournament like that and put my tournament on the line of am I going to mill the cards I want to mill? Am I going to draw the cards I want to draw? You want to draw JD, you don't want to mill JD, but the opposite could just happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't really like Lightsworn. I've played against it a couple times in the format, and they always get me one game where they just draw insane, and I'm like, okay, I got overwhelmed. Then the next game, I'll get to go first, and I'll beat them. And they game 3 they brick, and I'm like, oh, finally. Like fucking finally your deck caught up to you. The guy's like summon card trooper mill 3 pass, and I'm like, okay, good. Like now, like the game, now we're good. Like I'm good. Like if that's your turn 1, I'm fine with you going summon card trooper mill 3 pass. Like that's great. Or just like set a monster pass, and I'm just like, oh, finally, no, like you didn't go recharge charge. Like your Lumina's at 1, Charge Light Brigade's at 1, JD's at 2, Honest is at 2, Necrogarden is at 1. So a lot of it's things that made Lightsworn so good are just not really there. But I don't want to say that like there's no future for Lightsworn because I haven't really tried to break Lightsworn. I just completely wrote it off as a deck that hopefully my bottomless trap holes just line up correctly with your JDs or my Starlight Road lines up with your JD or something. Like I kind of just hope to God that either I don't play it at all or when I do play it, the deck just catches up with itself. It's like eventually you're going to not draw broken and that will be enough. And then the game I get to go first, like I'll probably win. But I don't think that deck is very good. So I would say that's probably like the next deck that's like not very good is like Quick Draw and then Lightsworn. I think that the Cat decks are actually so surprised because Cat's at 1. And it's so weird to say like I'm playing Cat and your fucking card is at 1.
Yeah.
Right.
But I swear a lot of people at my local play Cat and they draw that shit a lot. Or they just have like either they draw it blatantly or they just have like Summoner Monk a lot, and it's just like, oh my god, like here we go, or like I attack into a Sangan or something, and it's like, yep, here we go. So Cat is really, really good. It's so weird, and like it makes sense. Like one of the best players of all time, right? Like arguably, like he's like probably top 2, like Billy Brick. That's the deck that he played. This is the deck he fucking played for that event. Like he had to know something. Like even though the knowledge wasn't all there yet, right? Like he didn't play upstarts and stuff, but like he still knew what he was doing. And he got top 4 with the deck, and he lost to Jeff. Like I think Jeff's deck is definitely better. I feel like the Quick Draw deck probably does beat the Cat deck in my head. But like I think if you make the Cat deck correctly, I don't think that the Dandy Warrior deck stands a chance. Like it's just not very good. So yeah, I think the Cat decks are actually surprisingly really good. I think that Gadget, I have such a love-hate relationship with the Gadget deck because it got second. And I don't think Gadget should ever get second again. I don't think they should ever be anywhere close to that. Like in my head, right? Because it's such a basic, you know what I mean? Like it's such a, it's not, it doesn't synchro. It doesn't do anything. It just kind of like summon monster, attack, and like hope they get there with like overwhelming you with +1s that if you deep prison or mirror force me, they get like, oh, I got value. But that should not be enough to like win the tournament. So, and there's some shady shit about the guy that got second anyway. I heard that he's not exactly the cleanest of players. So I don't really know who he is. But I did not hear good things when I was like, how the fuck? I was asking people at local, like, how the hell did Gadgets get second anyway? And they were like, oh, that guy is like savage. I was like, oh, okay, well, that explains that. So, yeah, I don't know how Gadgets got second outside of like, shady stuff, I guess. But yeah, Gadgets in my head are not very good theoretically, but like it can just beat you when they go summon Gadgets at 4, and you're like, okay, and they're like oppressing you. Or Star Roll you heavy or whatever. It's like, yeah, well, you keep 1-for-1ing all my cards, or you ultimate offering me. That's just that card's game. So there's like very few ways they can actually beat you, but yeah, I think that. So I tend to look at that EdisonFormat.com for inspiration on decks.
Yeah, it's a great website.
Yeah, it's a great website, great resource for anybody who wants to play Edison Format. The fact that Edison Format has that, I think, puts it ahead of all the other formats for me. Like that.
Yep.
fucking website is insane. You can download the decks, so you don't have to type them in a dueling book. So you just play any random deck. Like I find random decks on there every week, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play Gear Town today, and that deck is awful. Don't get me wrong, but I just like some days I'm just like, I just want to play this deck. Keegan, the guy
Yeah.
who's like running these tournaments, he also posts like ridiculous, crazy
Yes.
troll decks on his YouTube page every week, and I try those out sometimes, and sometimes they work, and sometimes it's like, okay, this is a rant. Um, but like that's just fun that there's so many decks to be played and that you can get away with. But there is a tournament this Saturday coming up, March 26th and 27th. I think it's a 2-day event. And it has like I think it's free. And it has like a $2,000 prize pool. And the last one had 144 players. You can
Yeah.
look at the top 8 deck list on Edison Format from that last event. And it had like so first was Baby Turbo, second was Diva Hero, third was Neuralis, fourth was Hero Beat. But the Hero Beat that plays like Ocean, Miracle Fusions, and then like a very few monsters. So like Stratos, 3 Alias, Captain
Mhm.
Gold, Cyber Dragon Honest, and that's it. And then the rest of it is just like all the ignorant traps, Skill Drain, like all that stuff. That deck is really good. So that was like the top 4. And then you have the Fairy deck got I think 5th. And then or maybe it was either Fairies or the Amorales Burn deck. The Plant Burn deck is kind of scary too, because it puts you in a
Yeah.
situation where you can't win the game. Like it'll hit you so hard with like Titanial. It plays like 3 Titanial, 3 Phoenician Cluster, which no one played back then. No one even knew what that fucking card did. The card was completely unplayable, or so we thought. It's actually not bad. Like I've been playing with that deck too, like testing it. It's actually like low key kind of scary. Like the only problem with that deck is that it probably bricks more than the other top decks. But like when it does do what it's supposed to do, you literally can't lose because Volcanic Counter, like you're at 800. Like now you can never attack me. You can never deal damage to me, and I can crash into you and take damage and kill you. So
Yep.
that deck does something very interesting that no other deck really does. And I like that. I think Titano's also insane. Like that card, she's ridiculous. And playing 3 of her, while not the best, like you have trade in to mitigate it. Um, yeah, she's ridiculous. Like every card that's good in the format kind of targets, like Brionic targets, Dark Arm targets. Yeah, so everything targets, and then she's like, no. And then what I like to do with that deck is like you get Titanium out and then you just summon Dandelion next turn. It's like, oh my
Yep.
god. So now you're like attack, and they're like deep prison, you're like negate. And then I got 2 tokens, and now I got more negates, and it's just like, yeah, it just spirals. That deck is really good. Fairy's really good. Now that I've tested it, it's like, okay, this deck actually has a fucking hand trap, which is Herald of Mor's Light. It's kind of funny because that card's being played right now.
Yep.
And then you had zombies, and you had one more Diva Hero deck. So I've memorized the entire type 8 because I've been playing those 8 decks, like, and I've been fixing them and correcting them and stuff. And then like going, I said like I like Glad Beast, so I've been playing Glad Beast and stuff too. And I'm like, Glad Beast is one of those decks that I think that it rides the wave of the format. So for the last tournament, Glad Beast was bad because everyone was playing for Glad Beast apparently. Because like the tournament before that one, I heard the Glad Beasts were just everywhere and they were like really ruining people's day. A lot of people went into this last one playing anti Glad Beast cards and a lot more hate, like a lot more main deck deep prisons and stuff like that. A lot more main deck Dust Tornadoes. And then if people go by what topped the last one, they're like, oh no, Glad Beast. So then they kind of take out some of the anti Glad Beast cards and Glad Beast can shine again. You have to always consider stuff like that. Like it might not be the best deck, but it might be the best deck for an event. And that is probably more important than it being the best deck. Because sometimes the best deck gets shat on by everyone knowing it's the best deck. For example, in 2015 Nationals, I was playing Necros.
Yep.
And as good as Necros was, like it's the best deck. It has the highest ceiling and all these cool things that everyone likes to say, right?
Yep.
But everyone knew that, and it had already won and done all these cool things, and everyone's aware of it. So at that event at Nationals, round 1, I play against my opponent, and he fucking goes activate mistake, and he has Thunder King on the field, and he has like anti-spell fragrance, and I'm like, holy shit. And then he side decks and he ends up putting in like Imperial Iron Wall and like more hate. And I'm like, oh my god, like what the? And then round 2, I play against a guy who's playing. There's a skill drain trap. I forget what it's called. I forget what this card is called. It's like a trap card that basically Cleaforts play like that when that deck was playable.
Was it lose
And
one turn?
Yes, I think that's what it's called, right? It's like when you summon a monster, goes in the fence or something like that.
Lose one turn.
Yes, that card is fucking ignorant. So I play against a guy, he's playing that and like more anti stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like all these rounds are terrible. And my tournament just went like that. I only made it to like round 5 before I dropped. I was X3 by round 5, which is, I've never, mind you, I topped every nationals from 2011 to 2014. So 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, I topped every single one. And then I get to 2015 And I don't realize that the correct play is to play BA because everyone is aware of Necros and there's going to be so much hate for it. And it had been discussed too, like people are going to hate on it, but I was like, oh, my ceiling's so high, it doesn't matter. Your deck's shit if you're playing those cards anyway. But like, that's just not how it works. Necros does not have the engine, it's not built into its engine to defeat Mistake. Its engine cannot beat that card.
Yeah.
It can't beat Thunder King. Like its engine cannot beat these cards. So because of that, BA won the event. And not even to be results oriented, BA was just the best deck for that event, period. Because Fire Lake is insane. You can play around Necros. It's not as bad. Like, people think like Necros beats BA, but in reality and in hindsight, I don't really think that's true anymore. Like I think if I went back, I would just play BA. That deck is insane. And you can do all kinds of plays. They play Shaddoll Fusion on you if they like side it, because that was the thing people were doing, like siding in Shaddoll Fusion. Like you just chain Fire Lake and you pop both your Dantes and target the Shaddoll Fusion, and now they have to fuse from hand. And then like you get to resolve all your Dantes and your Seer, and you bring back Dante in defense mode when they can't get over him. So now you can just like, okay, now let's just play the waiting game. It's like I'll wait, and then like so that deck, like BA was really good, and it was the best deck for that event. And I think that is just like really important to know, like when something is good for an event, even if it's not necessarily the best deck agreed upon by the community. And sometimes it's good to just say fuck the community and do what you want. Like otherwise, Gravekeepers would have never happened.
Yeah.
That was not a known about deck at the time. Like no one knew that GK was the best deck by far at that time. Like it wasn't even close. Like that event, when you talk about easy, that was one of the easiest events I ever played in my life. Like it was just so like it was such an easy win. It's like you just royal tribute people, and then when you don't do that, Necro Valley is just enough to stop everything. And like Solemn Warning was at 3. Like you can't even feel like summon High Unlay. I'm like warning. Like what are you gonna like? The game's over. Like, you still have the word, and you can't play your E-Call. You got him's E-Call. Can't play Monster Born. You can't play Call of Haunted. Can't play Pot of Avarice. Can't play Debris Dragon. Like all your cards don't do anything. So stuff like that. Like meta calls are very important. Joe, you mentioned that when you won your YCS, you hadn't lost a Sword Soul, and you know that there's going to be a lot of Sword Soul there. So by default, like that's a great meta call. And like the Bird Up deck, like your worst matchup, not a lot of people play it.
Yep.
So one event you lost to Kamal, right? And then the next event, like Kamal's not around for it, so you just end up winning. It's like I don't have to play against a bunch of Bird Up. It just works out perfectly. It's like, oh wow, like you play against a bunch of Sword Soul, and that deck is just trash. I played against a bunch of Plants when I won, and Plants lose to Necro Valley. And Plants were like the deck. Like that's what people wanted to play back then. They wanted to play Plants. They wanted even Blackwing is really weak to the Gravekeeper deck because of Icarus Attack. I have Starlight Roads, and then Necro Valley shuts off a lot of your deck as well. You can't Blizzard and Dark Arm doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like Necro Valley has been errata the most out of all cards in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Necro Valley has been through the most erratas, and I couldn't even tell you what it does now. But there's been formats where Necro Valley just says like, "Don't even fucking look at your graveyard." Like the text is just like, "Don't even look in that direction." Like just don't even think about it. But yeah,
I just like wanted to say like circle back pretty far, but when you were talking about like bubbling your first YCS and then winning the next one or whatever, it's like exact same thing happened to me. I was X2 and I got like 35th or 36th, and I was like, happens, I guess. And then my first top is a win also, and like also just like struggling with the fact that like being like a champion or whatever, like you're held to like a higher standard.
Yes,
and like like all the other like champions will like reach out to you. Like I'm staying with Paulo and Rafael Nevin for the Mexico YCS coming up in a couple of months here, and it's just like the same thing with like imposter syndrome, where like you don't feel
you feel like because you're a new kid on the block, right? And I know what that feels like. You like think about this, like same thing you're saying. From my perspective, I won a YCS, and then the next thing I know, I'm on a team with like Jeff Jones and Billy Brick.
Yeah.
Like how the fuck? Like I would have never known, right? This little kid from the fucking Philly is just like a local. Like I'm locally like good and stuff, but then I see Jeff and Billy topping all these things. I don't know them at all. Never met them in my life, and then next thing I know, a year later, like I'm literally on the same team with them. We're sleeping in the same hotel room because Jim would like get a hotel, like 2 rooms and stuff. And it's just like weird and mind blowing. But then like that imposter syndrome thing happens, and you're like, I don't belong here. Like, how did I end up in this situation? But you have to like kind of just to let that go, let that like negativity go, because it does try to really invade your thoughts, and it can actually stop you from doing well. Like it'll make you, it'll
I
cloud
agree.
your judgment and just make you feel like you're not as good as you really are. Like you won for a reason. You made a good call, and like you made good plays, and and I swear, every single event that anyone's ever won, there's going to be drama surrounding
Yeah.
like there's always going to be drama, right? Like Paulie, he's going through some drama right now. They're like,
Yes.
oh, you asked to read these cards, like, so like who fucking knows what the fun of these cards do though? Like no one plays that. So like that's why I keep on putting on my Facebook like Rabina F. Like no one knows, like what does Rabina even do? Like it's just like I'm not surprised that somebody doesn't know what the non-combo deck does. Like that's
Yeah.
just people didn't know what Royal Tribute did. Do you know how many times I got asked, what does this card do? And then when I set all my cards, they call the judge on me and they're like, he doesn't have a hand. And the judge is like, I know. And they're like, well, how can he play a card that like discards both players' hands if he doesn't have a hand? He's like, well, that's just how it works. And then I do it again another game. They call another judge, and they're like, I want to talk to the head judge now. I'm like, oh my god. So it's just like, if we go into time because of that, like it's not my fault. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Like things happen, but there's always going to be stuff. But like you belong. It was meant for you, right? Like it was meant for you. Like what happened that day. Like there was a lot going on in your life, and like you persevered through it. You won, and like you deserve it. And you'll continue to be successful as long as you believe in yourself and like just put the time in. I think that's one of the most important things. Like as long as
Yeah, I agree.
you put the time in, I feel like it's really hard to not do well if you put the time in. Like I think that's just such an important thing. Like people always want to know like what's the secret? Like are all the good players just conspiring together, and like do they have some secret chat where they just make the best deck every time? Like that's not really what's happening. Like yes, like the best players, they like have a good deck and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you just need to play a lot. Like Hani talks about this too. He mentions how he just grinds the fuck out of Dueling Book.
Yep.
And he's like, that has made him, he's one of the best players right now. And that has made him one of the best players because he said, I just know every scenario. Like, I just literally know every scenario. Like, I'm putting the weirdest shit. Like, you'll play against a deck that, like, some Eldritch deck or something, and, like, people don't know how to properly play because they don't play against that often or whatever. And then you just figure out, like, oh, okay, this is what you do in this situation. And that like those little micro things that like this one little play that is enough for you to get like a top. Like that's the reason why you top, because like normally everybody else will fold in that situation and they won't top because they lost that round, and you won that round because and another thing, like Joe Giolando said in his he was on a podcast. I don't know if it wasn't mine, I don't think, or maybe he did say it on mine as well. But I was into a podcast with Joe Giolando, and he said something about how a lot of people don't know how to play against those decks that are like stun. When you play against stun, you don't like
Play through
draw.
traps. Yep.
Yeah, you don't like you don't draw heavy storm and play heavy storm. Like you actually hold it, and as long as you can, right before they kill you, but you hold it until you get like a solemn set, or until you get like multiple cards like MST and Industrial, and then that's how you break through, and then you make this one big ass turn that the stun decks can't come back from.
Yep.
And I knew that like for a while. So like those little things that other people like, oh fuck, here's heavy, play heavy, and they get like Starlight Road. It's like you didn't even try. Like you didn't even try to like give yourself time. Like the game doesn't end in one turn against those decks. Those decks are fair. Like they give you time. So just like knowing every scenario, I think matters a lot. And yeah, just believing in yourself, like not being too negative about like, am I going to do well at this event and stuff like that. Like try not to let that get to you. Also, the reality is once you win, most people are scared of you.
Yeah,
And
I've noticed that for sure.
there are a lot of free wins in that. Like this is not really talked about as much, but amongst the champions, it is. Like me, Silverman, McKay, we were all talking about it like 2 nights ago. Like I said, we stayed up till 5 a.m. and we were talking about like how, like the one guy asked me like how did you top so much, like fucking over 20 times, like so many, right? I'm like, yeah, but you like after I won, like I'd sit down and people would literally be like, oh fuck, like they'd literally come to the table and they'd say, oh fuck out loud. They'd be like, oh god, and like they see me with the ARG hoodie on. I pull out my spell ground, my little calculator case, because at that time, like I was all into all that stuff, and like they immediately already they're in their head. They already think they lost. So half my battle is done. If I set a back row, you're going to think it's Mirror Force Torrential because you just think I have everything, right? I just set MST because I ain't got shit else. But like, you think it's just the worst case. You think I set Oppression when you have a special summon in hand. Like, you're just terrified. And that by itself, like, beats a lot of people. You should not look at me as a person. You should just look at the situation at hand. Like, don't think of me as a computer and not necessarily as like this guy. And the only time I think that you should play the person is if you know the person. Like when I
Yep.
play against McCabe, I know him, so I know his quirks and he knows mine. So like we're each other's worst matchup because we actually know. Like I know that you just set that card and it's a bluff. Like because I know you, I know that is a bluff. But like if somebody else did that, like they have no idea. So 99% of the time when I play somebody, like I don't know them, like, you're just a on dueling book. You can't see the person, it's just like a name or
Yeah.
like a fucking like, same thing. Like don't look at them like, oh my god, I'm playing against Jeff, I'm playing against Billy or whatever. It's like just play them, just play the person, and well play against the deck you're playing against, play the situation you're in, and that's it. And if you practice enough, you'll probably do well, unless your deck sucks.
Yeah.
In case
Right.
play a better deck. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Did you have something?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
I
I mean, if you guys are wrapping, are we wrapping up? Or
yeah, I think
I was
I'm
going to
good.
give a
Yeah.
shout
I think I'm
out
good to wrap it up.
Okay, well, I just want to give a shout out to the Midwest Gaming Podcast and also to my own podcast. I am their podcast. You can check us out on like everything. We have a link tree. I'm going to give you guys my link tree because it's easier. I feel
Sure.
like
Yeah.
because that'll just like some people don't have Spotify, some people don't have Apple Podcasts or whatever. So that just has everything. It has a link to everything, including our YouTube. There's an episode with Joe on there. There's a really good episode. One of my favorites, honestly. Like Kenny and I were talking. Like after the episode, we were like, that was like really really good. So it's just interesting to interview someone who's very similar to myself in their journey, like first hop, first win. There was definitely drama surrounding mine because it's all types of fucking legality questions on royal tribute and stuff like that. But yeah, so shout out to I do a podcast as well, and you guys will see it in the description or however you guys put it in for this one. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're interested in hearing other interviews with Yu-Gi-Oh players, then check out my podcast. I have like Patrick Hoban, we have Shufilm, Joe, we have Dale Bolito. He's come on twice now. Blair Hunter, Ed Exception, just like, and we're building. There's more and more people coming on soon. So
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I like have been friends with you on Facebook for a while, but I don't think we really interacted.
yeah,
But like I was on the podcast and now like I've listened to probably 90% of them just like
yeah,
gone back through
yeah.
and I was just like, damn, like I really like they're all really enjoyable.
Yeah, like even when it's not necessarily Yu-Gi-Oh, you can still listen to it and just kind of like because I always tell people if it's not a subject, like first when you first start listening to it, you can just go to the episodes that are relevant to you. So if you don't
Yep.
watch or read One Piece, then like obviously you're not going to click on the episode that says One Piece, and that's fine. Like I don't mind that, like it's fine. Everything's not for everyone, but if you're like Naruto, we have Naruto episodes. If you like Attack on Titan, we have Attack on Titan episodes. We have Demon Slayer episodes, and then after that, you can put the other ones on as background noise when you're like doing something else. Like because Kenny and I, we get off topic a lot. Like we just start ranting after a while, and that's who we are. Like we've been friends for 12 years, and we've always been the type that just rant. So even when you see the title of an episode, like don't think that that's all we talk about because we go off on the deep end. Like we started talking about 90 Day Fiance one time out of nowhere, and that shit just got so out of hand. I was like, we're gonna get canceled. So like just you never know what you're gonna get is what I'm saying. Like just don't be deceived by the title of the episode because it could just be entertaining, or you could put it on while you're sorting cards or sending out orders. A lot of my friends they buy and sell cards, and they're like, I'll put it on when I'm just doing my orders for the day, and I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
that's great. It's just like background noise, like
Mhm.
something to hear while you're doing something else. But yeah.
Perfect.
I hope to have you guys on my podcast again. Joe and Ryan, you can also join it next time. You can have the Midwest Gaming Pod. Is it just you two? Like, is it you two who do it?
So it's a little bit different every week. We
Yeah.
get a couple times we've done like group things where we talk about the meta, where we talk
Yeah.
about non-Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. Sometimes I'm on my own, talking about other stuff or interviewing some older players as well. So it's pretty like
All over the
varied
place.
week to week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
very
So you
focused.
guys have like a team, right? So like
Yeah.
Yes.
it's a team. So that's actually kind of cool that yours can literally change depending on like who's available and stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a like a Midwest Gaming, podcast episode. That would be cool.
That'd be fantastic. We would love
Yeah.
that.
100%.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks
And
for doing this. Thanks for chatting with us. And
yep. Let me know when it's posted. Just send me a message, and I'll put it on their podcast page. I'll put it on my own Facebook page, and yeah, we go from there.
awesome.
Perfect.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so
Alright.
much, Frazier.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Peace.